Hello, welcome to Legacy Stories. In this podcast series, we highlight the many different stories that residents at Legacy Retirement Community have experienced in their lifetime. Take a listen.
My name is Nancy Mayborn Peterson. I grew up in Scottsbluff, out in the Panhandle. And I guess if you want advice, my first advice is go to the western end of the state if you haven't been.
I have not been, have you?
No, I have not.
Josh, why don't you just give out the first question here?
Alright, so where did you go to what did you do in high school and stuff? What was your highlights from your high school, college days, if you went to college?
My main interest has always been journalism, writing, and so I was in journalism class, which means that you put out the school paper. Mm-hmm. It's called Echoes from the Bluff, and I was one of the editors of the paper, and I also always liked literature and history classes. I sang in the choir. I did things was on student council and that kind of thing.
Awesome, yeah. So it looks like you were in a kind of a wide variety of thing with.
I believe
with
so.
Choir, yeah. So your teachers probably gave you quite a bit of useful information. What was one thing that you took with you for the rest of your life?
I guess I would say my journalism teacher was my mentor, and she basically said that if you want something, you have to work for it, and that you should go to it.
Awesome.
And with all the journalism stuff, what was your favorite part about journalism? Is it the writing? Is it the going out?
Well, they're kind of equal, writing and getting the story, I think. It's that paper was published at the Star Herald building, so we went down to the building and got to see how the linotype. This is ancient history. The linotypes worked, and they were in that day and age. They were setting print, and it was interesting to be able to be in the paper while it was operating, and you could see what went on.
Awesome. Is there a favorite story or promotional thing or whatever? Is there a favorite one that you put out that got published?
Well, most of that's been. There were things. I know one thing I did that might be interesting to you is I wrote a editorial on the anniversary of December 7th. December 7th is the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I was very conscious of that. For one thing, I can't think what I was going to say. The Scottsbluff was very involved in World War II, and I think that's had a big effect on my life. It was the Scottsbluff, just as a little town out there on the Panhandle, 30 miles from Wyoming. Mm-hmm. We had an airport. The Scottsbluff Airport was turned in to a B-17 bomber training base, mm-hmm. and men came from Cheyenne and worked together for maybe 6 weeks to learn to be a crew together, and then they were off to war. So we were very involved. They had a German prisoner of war camp, and Germans actually came, but they weren't confined. They were confined to their headquarters, to the camp, but they also went out into the community because they had brought them there to help with the harvest and planting. That's what they needed, labor. All our labor, all the young men were off fighting the war, and so the town was pretty upset when they found out there were going to be Germans just a mile or so east of town in this big camp. But it didn't make any difference to the army. They were going to do what they were going to do, which is understandable.
Yeah. So, what was it like living through a world war? Luckily, we haven't had to live through that. What was it? Was it very stressful, worrisome?
It was very stressful. It was, people were afraid, particularly in the first couple of years of the war, because the Nazis in particular had all of Europe down into the Mediterranean and South Africa, and we didn't really get into it until the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And when that happens, then of course we went to war, and we weren't ready. People had kind of hoped to ignore this war that was already going on in Europe, and we had a really hard time. I understand that some of the soldiers trained with wooden cutouts for rifles. They didn't even have a real gun. We just weren't ready at all, and it was a real struggle to accomplish what we did eventually. I think of course, eventually we invaded Europe, and it was. But it was not a sure thing in 42 and 43 particularly. It was quite some time before we started winning any battles or making any progress. So it was a very stressful time. Everybody worked so hard. They had to do double duty. They ran 24/7, and women went to work in defense factories. It was all-encompassing. Everything was aimed at what they called the war effort. Winning the war was our purpose, and children were just as involved. I was a campfire girl, and I pulled my little red wagon around collecting scrap metal. They were desperate for scrap metal, and people were cleaning out their garages and basements and giving away anything they had that might be useful. They could be melted down, because steel needs so much, I don't know what you call it, but they needed scrap metal to mix with the steel. I'm not a chemist.
It's all right. It's all right. We aren't either.
Yeah.
So, how did your views change at the end of the war of the world compared to at the beginning when we first entered, or even before we entered?
Well, much more aware of the world. Growing up in a little town in Nebraska, you didn't think much about the rest of the world. And by the time we got through fighting through all the islands in the Pacific, and most people had a big map on the wall, and so they could try to keep track of what was really going on. It was a real struggle, but thank God we made it, because the world is Well, it's a mess right now.
Yeah.
But at least the Nazis and the Japanese were defeated.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was just much more aware that our oceans didn't protect us. That there were a lot of isolationists that thought they would just be better off staying out of it, but that wasn't working. There was nobody but Britain. When we joined the war, Britain was all that was left that was free in that whole European area.
So did you have any family members or friends that served in World War II or even in the wars afterwards that you took part in?
I haven't personally. I'm from a family of girls, and so I didn't have that. My husband did. And also his company had German prisoners of war working for them. It was, as I say, just an all-out effort, and thank God we won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like moving on from like the whole like war thing, how has like family impacted your life? Like you said, you were from a family of girls. How did they like help shape you to be the person that you were today?
We loved each other. We hear about families not getting along these days, and we think it's such a shame that you can't get along. We always enjoyed each other. We shared Christmases together. Not everybody could be there every time, but everybody that came that could, and it was wonderful. And we did a lot of picnicking. We liked the outside, and Scottsbluff has a lake. I don't know, 15 miles out in the country. We went to the lake and swam, and we went out to Wildcat Hills, which are bluffs with pine trees. You could hike all over there. We were free to move around town. We rode our bicycles out to the swimming pool, which was clear across town. We had a good life, really, and I always have thought that was a good time to grow up. In spite of the war and the difficulties, it was a good time to grow up because people were patriotic. They believed in our country. We thought the United States was the best nation in the world. I think maybe it still is. Maybe, I don't know what's going to happen. But it was a good place to grow up.
And sticking with the family, how did you meet your husband and how has he impacted your life?
I met him in junior college at that time. It's now called Nebraska Western.
Mm-hmm.
But he was from Gearing, and so we were rival high schools, but we managed to get over that.
Yeah.
And we had a mixer after a football game, and he asked me to dance, and it kind of settled things from there.
Yeah.
So it seems like you have like even with like the war, it seems like you have like a lot of memories that you were able to recall just then. If there was one moment in your life that you could relive, what would that be, if any?
I don't know. I don't think you can go back and relive a moment, I think that if you I think you need to have good values. We certainly went to church, and my mother was a teacher. My dad was an electrical engineer. They were literate people. They read all the time. I think we subscribed to 4 or 5 magazines. One being Life magazine, which was a big 4-color issue they put out every week. It's to me amazing that they were able to do that, but we were always paid attention and were involved. You vote, you go to church, you do what's right.
If there was, what would you say is like, I don't know, what jobs, let's say, did you have throughout your life? Like,
well, in those days, husbands wanted their wives to be home with the kids, and that's where I wanted to be. And I did reach out more when my husband's job was changed. He was with a family bean company, and when his father decided to sell the company, it was bought by Gooch Food Products, who were here in Lincoln. And so I had 2 children by then, and I had all 3 children by then. And we moved to Lincoln and rented a house, and then eventually bought a house. We were only here about 2.5, 3 years, and it was, I liked Lincoln, but it was difficult to, I didn't have enough to occupy my mind. I was taking care of kids, and my husband was on the road, so he was gone all week, and I needed something to do, and there was an adult education class in writing at Lincoln High School, and so I went and enjoyed the things we were asked to write, and I decided, the teacher encouraged me to try, and so I had no idea earlier of trying to be an author or anything, but I started submitting. The first thing was our church had a magazine, and they had short stories in it, and I looked at the short story and I thought, I can do a version of that, and so I did, and they bought it, and voila, it was an author. So it was fun, and then I as I say, the teacher had encouraged me, and I was trying to sell, and did, and so I kept doing that. You made a little money, I mean, that much, but it was, I then did have done that all my life. It's called being a freelance writer, and I've had over 100 articles of various kinds published. I now have 5 books, Western history mostly, and it's been very satisfying interest. It kept me occupied, and at the same time I got out and around. I worked about 10 years as a freelancer for a paper out in Colorado. We moved to Colorado in 75, and so we were there from 75 till we moved here in 2019. It's I write mostly regional history. My first book was about the Platte River, and I like to write stories of people. Mm-hmm. I'm not an academic writer. I write for the general public, and I enjoy learning about people. It's just one of my books I dedicated to my folks because they taught all of us daughters the joy of learning. Mm-hmm. I think learning is a lifetime thing, and I think that it's a very excellent thing to do because you any time you're learning, at least with me, I like to do research and I like to learn new facts, and I'm still doing it here at Legacy. Mm-hmm. We have different documentaries, and we have a core of people who still want to keep learning, and I guess that would be my best advice to you, is to keep your mind active and keep yourself in good health, take care of your body, and I think that you will be grateful that you did. I think that's the way to lead a good life.
Yeah, I know I can't really speak for Josh, but I'm sure he'll agree. Learning new things and meeting new people is one of my favorite things, which is actually why we're doing this project, because it's such a great idea, because we're learning so much from you and the other residents that we've talked to. Is there any questions that you have for college students or high school students? Me and him are both sophomores in college. So is there any questions that you always wonder why people like me or him do things?
Well, I guess on the frivolous side, why do you wear some of the haircuts you wear?
That's a good question. I'm not really too sure how to answer. I've always had this haircut my whole life. Yeah. My mom would never let me do anything crazy with it. So I guess I'm one of the ones with, I guess, a quote unquote normal haircut. But I do also have that question for people that are in my same age.
For me, when I was a child, it was always a buzz cut, because my dad always cut my hair. That was the easiest thing to do, was just a buzz cut. And then can't remember when I was younger. I had a favorite sports player when I was younger. I couldn't remember who it was, but he had this haircut that I always I wanted to be like him, and that's kind of what it is now. Yeah. So I kind of just I base my hair off of my favorite sports players. Mm-hmm. So that's why I went with the hair I go with. But usually when I was younger, it was just a buzz cut until I got to it was about 14, 15. Then my mom and dad was like, all right, you can choose your own hairstyle to a degree, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think the big thing is we just take inspiration from popular people. If the most famous musician in the world has one haircut, I can guarantee that a lot of people that look up to him are gonna follow in their footsteps because they want to be like their inspiration. I guess that's probably the best answer I can give for that question. Is there anything else?
Well, I hate to bring up the name, but I'm hoping that you young people are not on Donald Trump's team. I mean, he is an evil man, and I hope people don't swallow his lies about losing the election, because he got beat fair and square, and I don't know why anybody would be supporting him, and I hope that you young people have not fallen for him.
For me, politically, I've tried to stay out of it, even for both sides. There's obviously, doesn't matter who's the president, they're obviously going to do some things wrong, but they'll also do a lot of things right. So for me, it's I don't know how. I don't really pick a side. I just kind of stay out of that in general.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant place to be
exactly.
anymore.
Yeah, I mean, obviously now we're eligible to vote. I just plan on doing as much research as possible. I've never voted before because obviously at the last election I wasn't of age, I guess. But all it's going to take for me is I'm going to do a ton of research and really learn as much as possible, and then I'll go from there. But yeah, I'm kind of just like in Josh's boat. I don't really get myself involved in too much politically, but obviously it's becoming a turning point where we're going to have to start at least knowing what's going on so we can make judgments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're wise. I think that's what you need to do, is to research and not swallow somebody's line. Well, I'm just wondering, are you journalism majors?
Yes.
Yeah, both of us are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be doing quite a bit of writing and recording just like we are right now. So it's going to be a long journey, but I think it's going to be a fun one.
Yep.
So
I think so.
I'm looking forward to it.
I just got my first article posted a couple weeks ago. I covered the UNL did a press conference for the basketball coaches and all that, so I did a write-up story on that, and it got it published a couple weeks ago.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was exciting, especially to share that with all my family. How proud they were of me.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
a great feeling.
It's a great pleasure, really, to be published. I've been well received, and I've been grateful for the life I've had. It's been I wouldn't change it, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying it's always been smooth sailing, but it's on the whole very satisfactory.
Yeah, I know on behalf of me, I'm sure Josh as well, and our whole group and the whole University of Nebraska-Lincoln, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and talking to us. I think it's been a pretty good conversation that we had here today.
Well, thank you for being interested.
Thank you.